So hello everybody. So first, thanks to the organizer for giving me the opportunity to talk about prospects on simulation of the ISM and the star formation process. So I made this talk with input from Guillaume Leb, Patrick Campbell, Hugo Lobry, and the GINEA group. So we'll come to that a bit later. So here are the outline of my presentation. So first, I will introduce simulations of astrophysical flows, in particular for the PCMI community. Then I will present you the tools that we are using, and I will also present some scientific highlights that we have with the current tools, and I will then give you some perspective on what is next, so both on the physics and also on the technology. Okay, so first, as you know, the matter, interstellar matter, is subject to a cycle. So all start in the warm and ionized medium, so which is diffused and relatively and hot, warm. And then this WNM condense through the thermal instability into a cold neutral medium in which H2 forms onto dust grains, which give birth to molecular clouds, which are giant, complex, turbulent, and magnetized. And within molecular clouds, we form dense core, which are gravitationally unstable structures that will collapse onto themselves, form a system made of a protostar and a protostellar disk. So the protostar is the progenitor of the star, and the protostellar disk is the progenitor of the protoplanetary disk in which planet will form. Then to close the loop, so first, the thing that you should notice is that, well, we start from density of 1 particle per cc, temperature of 1000 Kelvin, and then we have to go to density more than 20 orders of magnitude larger than the initial one, and temperature will first decrease and then increase again to form a star. Also for the scale, we start from let's say parsec to kiloparsec scale down to scales of 10 to the minus s parsec. Okay, and then to close the loop, all these different components will feedback, let's say, onto other components. So through what we call a feedback. So we have feedback at the protostellar stage through jets and outflows. There are also stellar winds, supernova explosions, and this tells you that, well, all the scales are linked together, which means that if we want to have a coherent picture, then we need to account for all these scales. Okay, so clearly here you see that we need a tool to simulate this that is multi-scale. Okay. Then in the ISM, as you know, we find a lot of things. So in particular, we find photons at all wavelengths when we observe the galaxy. We find, of course, gas. This gas is turbulent. Then, as you have seen, we observe magnetic fields at all scales in the ISM, so from the galactic scale down to stellar, protostellar cores. There is also some dust that you will see will be important for the dynamics and also the thermal behavior of the gas during the collapse. And there are also some cosmic rays that will ionize the medium. And when we look at the energy of all these components in the ISM, what we find is that, well, they are all in equipartition, meaning that all these components should interact to regulate star formation in the ISM. Okay. So on top of the multi-scale problem, we have to deal with a multi-physics problem. So we need to account for a lot of physics. So we need to add physical processes and then to see what is the effect of each physical processes. So we make progress, but relatively slow progress. So here is my first takeaway message when we do simulation of the ISM. So first, numerical simulation are the best laboratory to study astrophysical fluid dynamics over a long time scale. It's also to test theoretical prediction and also to help to interpret and to compare two observations. And then what we need is are tools that are multi-scales and multi-physics. On top of this, these tools should be heavily parallelized, meaning that they have to run on supercomputers. So here is an example of the most powerful supercomputer in France today, so Jean Zay, which is based at Idris, which has tens of thousand CPUs. Okay, so to deal with this problem, so here is an example of a code that we use in the community. So this is the Ramses code. So Ramses has been developed by Romain Tessier, so who was first at CEA Seclé, then after in Zurich, and now moved to Princeton University. So Ramses has, so the main features of Ramses are first adaptive mesh refinement, meaning that we can refine the grid according to some user-defined criteria. So for instance, here is a dark matter simulation where the grid is refined according to the density of dark matter particles. You see that we can reach very high resolution where there is a high concentration of particles. Here it is for star formation calculation, where you have here the gas density and the corresponding grid. And here the grid has been refined according to the Jeans length, so which scales as the inverse of the square root of the density, meaning that in the high density region, we have a high resolution. So Ramses is quite popular today because it is standalone, meaning that you can download it and you can run it on your personal computer, and you can also run it directly on supercomputers. It is heavily parallelized using the MPI library, so it's a distributed memory. So today, Ramses is used in a number of astrophysical applications which deal with thematics of different national programs. So it goes from cosmology to galaxy formation evolution, star and planet formation, and also compressible turbulence. So here I just want to show you what is the physics included into Ramses. So there are different versions of Ramses. So there is the public one that everybody can download, and then there are what we call forked version, which are not the official version, but that you can have access to them. So in the public version, so Ramses includes gravity, either so self-gravity or user-defined. There is also dark matter, which participate to the gravity if needed. Then collisionless particles are implemented, so to follow dark matter evolution, stars, sync particle, which can be assimilated to protostar. And also to each of these particles, like the star, there are some subgrid model for the feedback of star formation, of also, for instance, AGN that are available in order to have dynamical, radiative feedback. Then there are a lot of things which are coupled to the hydrodynamics. So there is a radiative transfer, magnetic field in the hydro-MHD approximation, spatial relativity, non-thermal fluid, and also some interface with some chemistry code like Chrome. Okay. Then in fork version, so for instance, we share a version which is called Ramses ISM, so for the dynamics of the ISM, where we have non-ideal MHD, so where we account for non-perfect coupling between the gas and dust mixture and the magnetic fields. We have also some module to account for, to follow the evolution of a cosmic ray. So this is anisotropic diffusion. We have also a module to follow the dust dynamics, to follow also a multi-frequency radiative transfer, and also so a lot of different modules. So all these modules are currently ported into the public version. And what I want to stress here is that in order to get all this physics into Ramses, it took about 20 years, okay? Meaning that Ramses, first paper of Ramses is 2002, and today, 20 years after, we have all this physics implemented, okay? Also, what I want to show is that this kind of code can be seen as a community code, that means that it involves a lot of human resources and also, to some extent, a lot of money. So today in France, the French community, it's about 40 to 50 papers using the Ramses code. Also, Ramses run on facilities, so first at GENCI, so at a national level, and also at the price, so at the European levels, and it represents about 100 million CPU hours per year. So the equivalent cost of this is about 1 million euro per year that is spent to run Ramses on this kind of facilities. So Ramses is also organized to let's say, form the next generation of researchers. So this is done through, for instance, some schools like the AstroSim schools, where we learn how to use Ramses and also other codes which are used in the French community. And also we have some Ramses user meeting with about 50 participants each year, where we make a stable release version. We present the latest development, the latest scientific highlights, and also we do some hackathon session to implement some new physics. So what I want to show you is that while today, this kind of code development and management of the community is equivalent to the development and the running operation of an instrument. So it involves a lot of resources, okay? So from that, I will present you a few science cases that have been obtained with Ramses and with high performance computing. So the first one is a study by Patrick Enbel, which has received for this work a prize allocation, so a few tens million CPU hours, so about 20 million. So here the aim is to look at the dynamics from the galactic scale down to the dense core scale. So from scale ranging from the kiloparsec to 10 to the -3, 10 to the -2 parsecs. So here the simulation takes a portion of the galaxy, a kiloparsec box, and the dynamics is regulated by supernova explosion. So here are here's the gas distribution in this kind of calculation. So you see the huge dynamical range that is covered down to dense core scales. Okay. So from this kind of calculation, we can get a lot of information, in particular on the properties of dense cores. So if you look at, for instance, the Alfvénic Mach number as a function of the mass within the dense core, we find that most of the cores, low mass cores, are subalfvénic, meaning that they have a strong magnetic field. This is also seen in this diagram here, where you see the mass to flux ratio. So for mu above 1, the clouds are supercritical, meaning that they are not supported by magnetic field. For mu below 1, they are subcritical, meaning that they can be supported by magnetic field. And you see that, well, most of the dense structure seems to have a very strong magnetic field with mu less than 10. Okay. Also, from this kind of calculation, we can compute the core mass function. So here are core mass function obtained for supercritical clouds or for gravitationally unstable cores. And you see that, well, the slope of the observed CMF is quite well reproduced, but we don't have a robust peak, meaning that if we change the resolution of the simulation, then the peaks move to the left. So here, if we want to see if there is a convergence of the peak of the CMF, for instance, we need to increase the resolution, meaning that we need to increase the computational time. Okay. A second application is now to go from this let's say, parsec scale down to the AU scale, down to the scale at which protostellar disk will form. So here is an example of the work led by Hugo Lebris in the ERC ECOGAL. So here we take 1,000 solar mass cloud and with initial turbulence, initial magnetic field, and we let it collapse and zooming okay, down to scale where protoplanetary disk can be formed. So you see here the huge dynamical range that is covered. And here, three different cases have been performed. So first, without a magnetic field, hydro case, then with the ideal MHD approximation, and then accounting for ambipolar diffusion, which is, we think, the mechanism that regulates the disk properties at the early stages. And from this kind of calculation, we can form a population of disks, okay, that can be then directly compared to the statistics obtained with observation as Anaël just presented, so with obtained with ALMA or NOEMA. So here is a first calculation, but more will come very soon. Because this kind of work, this work has received also a prize allocation. So Hugo Loubry is the PI. So it's about 30 million CPU hour to run 10 new models where we will vary the mass, the radius, the magnetic field intensity, and also the dust evolution will be followed for the first time. Okay, meaning that we will have access to the gas and the dust structure. So for this kind of project, you see that we anticipate 30 terabytes of data that will be generated and about 2,000 protoplanetary disks that can be formed. So a lot of statistics that will be available. So now I move to the prospective part. So what is next? So currently, as you have seen with Anaël's talks, we think that the gas and dust dynamics should be treated during the early stages of a star formation. So why is that? It is because if you consider a dust grain will feel a drag force from the gas, and this drag force is proportional to what we call the stopping time. So this is the time that the dust grain needs to adjust to a velocity difference in the gas phase, okay? And the stopping time scales with the size of the dust grain, meaning that the larger the dust grain, the longer the stopping time and the smaller the drag force. So if you consider a population of dust grain with different sizes, they won't be dynamically, they will not be coupled to the gas dynamically the same way, depending on what we call the Stokes number, which is the ratio between this stopping time and the dynamical time. So for instance, in a molecular cloud, the dynamical time is the turbulent time. So this is the RMS velocity, the length of the cloud divided by the RMS velocity, or in a collapse, it can be the free fall time. So for Stokes less than 1, there is a strong coupling, but there can be still some differences in the two dynamics for Stokes, let's say, of the order of 10 to the -1 or 10 to the -2. So what we have done in the recent years is that we have implemented dust dynamics into the Ramses code. This was the PhD work of Hugo Loubry. And this is quite important to have this kind of tool because we know that dust grains will regulate the charge in collapsing dense core, and also dust are responsible for most of the opacity of the medium. Then, if we follow also the dust dynamics, we are looking at the building blocks of planet formation. So here is an example of a collapse calculation with dust dynamics. So you see here the gas density, and on the left, you see the variation of the dust to gas ratio. So all what is blue will be dust depleted compared to the initial dust content, and all what is red will be dust enriched. So if we look at the dynamics, you see that, well, we form a disk with an outflow, and you see that, well, the dust has enriched here in the high density regions, and also here close to the outflow edge, and also can be depleted here in the outflow. So meaning that already at the collapse stage, dust can dynamically decoupled from the gas dynamics. So, and in particular, we have shown that, well, if we look at the dust density compared to the gas density, so in the hydro case or ideal MHD case, we find that the dust will fall faster than the gas because they don't feel directly the pressure support. And then the disk can be born dust-rich, okay? And dust-rich in large dust grains, meaning that there is an evolution of the dust size distribution that is only due to dynamics. Okay, and this looks quite consistent with recent observations, as Anaël just talked about. And this is quite important if you consider that, for instance, here we have more large grain than small grains, because it will change the resistivity of the medium. And here is an example of a work by Zhao et al., where they consider MRN dust distribution and a truncated MRN where there are no more small grains. And you see that if you compute the resistivity from this dust size distribution, in one case, you do not form a disk, and in another case, you will form a disk. So this is with ambipolar diffusion. So you see here how important it is to account for the dust dynamics for the disk formation. The second thing is that second aspect for the dust dynamics is about dust growth. So here is an illustration by the work by Vincent Guillet, where he looked at dust growth in a collapsing medium, accounting for turbulence and also ambipolar diffusion as, let's say, a velocity shift between the dust and the gas phase, and also between the dust of grains of different sizes. And what Vincent here has shown is that, well, we can get rid of all the small grains quite rapidly and grow to about 10 microns early on in the collapse. And if you compute the resistivity of the medium from this different dust size distribution, you see that, well, depending on where we account for turbulence only or ambipolar diffusion for the velocity shift or both, well, the resistivity changed by orders of magnitudes. Okay, so we need to know also about dust growth in order to estimate these resistivities. The problem is that here for this kind of study, so this is a one-zone model, and we need to describe the dust size distribution here by, in that case, 35 size bins in order to follow correctly the dust growth. And clearly, when you think about a 3D simulation, we cannot have 35 more variables in our simulation. So we need to go for other schemes. So here is a scheme that has been developed by Maxime Lambert during his PhD with Guillaume Leib in Lyon. So the problem with dust coagulation is that, well, all the species can interact to grow, meaning that these two dust grains can form a larger grain, and then this large grain can also interact with these small grains. And when you consider a classical method, like the one I just presented, and that there is not enough resolution, then you see that there is an overdiffusion. So this is the analytical solution of the dust growth, and this is the numerical solution, and you see that we have too many large dust grain because of numerical diffusion. And Maxime has developed a new scheme based on a discontinuous Galerkin method that increase considerably the accuracy of the dust growth numerical implementation to levels that can be tractable for numerical simulation, meaning that we can have 15 to 20 bins, and then that could be used in 3D numerical models. So clearly, the next thing for the physics will be to follow the dust dynamics and the dust growth. And now I want to make the point about technologies. So here is the top 5 supercomputers in the world. So I took it yesterday from the top 500 website where it listed the 500 most powerful computers in the world. And what you see here is that, well, for 4 out of these 5 top computers, we have new architectures which have GPUs, so graphical processing units, so graphic cards mainly, and also ARM processors. And these are new architecture, very different from the classical CPU that we are using currently. And why is that? It is because this kind of architecture is less, let's say, demanding in terms of energy consumption. So currently, 1 CPU hour on a supercomputer with only CPU, it is about 4 grams of CO2 emission. So if we want to increase the computational power, we need to find some way to decrease this energy consumption. So a second thing is that, well, the computational power is increasing. So here you have the performance as a function of the year for all the top 500 computer, for the most powerful computer. And you see that, well, within 2 years, we will reach what the exascale era. So exascale is that we can achieve 10 to the 18 floating point operation per second. Okay, so this will allow to run very large model, to have access to very large data. The problem is that with exascale, we will have machines that will have a lot of computing units. So we have a problem of parallelization. We need to distribute let's say, the computation over a lot of different domains. And also the trend is that the current trend is that there is a decrease of the memory per thread, meaning that we can increase the number of processors, but we have less memory per processor. Another thing is that when we have a lot of, let's say, operation, we can enlarge data. There is a huge race on I/O, so on data writing onto, let's say, disks. The challenge also with exascale is that we have to adapt to new architecture, as I just showed you, so GPU, ARM processors. And there is today no clear view on what the future will be about with this hybrid architecture. So it's continuously evolving between GPU, ARM, and even this FPGA card. So the problem is that currently, for instance, the Ramses code or most of the numerical code that are used in the community cannot run on this hybrid architecture. So with our current tools, we cannot go to exascale. So clearly, we need to develop new tool, so in the next year, that will be built for hybrid architecture and also for exascale to have access to a very large simulation cube. So for that, the community is organizing. So in particular, there is the GINEA group. So GINEA stands for Groupe d'investigation numérique pour l'exascale en astrophysics. So the PI is Dominique Aubert in Strasbourg. And here you see that there are various researchers in France. And the aim of this group is to discuss about, let's say, the new developments and to be aware of the technological changes in order to build a new code for design for exascale. So here is an example of an initiative. So this is the Diablo code, so mainly developed at CEA by Arnaud Durocher and Maxime Delorme. So Diablo is a new AMR code, okay, that can run on different architectures, so CPU and also GPUs. And so the idea is to develop this Diablo code with the same, let's say, requirement that we had for the Ramses code. And here you have an example of a scalability test, so obtained with Diablo, so on GPUs. So you see here, so the result obtained with Diablo, and so in green, the one of Ramses. So you see that we have quite a substantial acceleration of the computational time thanks to the use of the GPUs. Okay, so this is work in progress, and there are various, let's say, other code that are developed in the community, so using a different approach like SPH by Guillaume Leib, or the EDFix code that should, let's say, replace in the near future, for instance, the code like the Pluto code. So this is a development done by Geoffroy Le Sur. And third thing is that, well, we will have, let's say, huge simulation volume, so a lot of data, and then how do we deal with all this data, and how do we give access to all these simulation results? And this will be done through the development of databases, and in particular, so the Galactica database, which is also developed at CA by Damien Chimpon, where you can provide some simulation results that are accessible, and then you can provide some services on the simulation results, like, for instance, computing dust emission map from a simulation. So I encourage you to go to Galactica, go and see what kind of simulation are available, and see if these simulations are interested for the object you are looking at, and then to see if you can it can help you to interpret your observations. So I will finish here. So I think, I hope I've convinced you that the coming 10 years will be challenging. So we will have first to take benefit of all the developments we have done in the past 20 years. So in the different code, we will have to explore some missing physics with this current code. And at the same time, we will have to develop a new generation of code targeting towards hybrid architecture and exascale. And for that, we need some human resources, and we also need to train the next generation of researchers with this new method, and this is clearly the challenge for the next 10 years. So I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Benoit.